Good morning, I'm Steve from Nutmeg. This is actually clickbait. We didn't build our tech team in just 3 hours. But Natasha asked me to talk about a topic which some of you have already addressed, I found out this morning. Some of you need to address, but you don't know how to address it. And some of you don't know how to address it, and you definitely haven't addressed it. So our engineering recruitment process up to 2018, April 2018, looked like this. Screening call between candidate and talent team. Then hiring manager to review CV. Then feedback from hiring manager. Then sending a coding assessment to the candidate. Then receive assessment from candidate and send to hiring manager. Then the hiring manager reviewed the code. Then a 2-hour on-site technical assessment with a senior and a mid-level engineer. Then a final stage interview with the tech lead and hiring manager. Then we offered or declined candidates. If you're a candidate, you don't want to do this, for sure. Especially we've got people like Expedia offering a 3-hour interview process. This took us circa 7 hours. That's not including the time that it took the candidate to do the code assessment. That can range from anything between 3 and 6 hours. So we're looking between 10 and sort of 13 hours of interview process for a 60 to 70 grand job. So 45%. Nutmeg were losing about 45% of our engineering candidates between initial call and final stage. So if you think about that and just take it in for a second, 4 or 5 of the 10 candidates we were speaking to on average weren't getting through to meeting our tech leads and VP of engineering. This is a shocking stat. So what did that mean for us? The interview process was broken, very, very simply. We weren't getting enough people through the door and the funnel wasn't getting, people weren't getting through the funnel quick enough. Our candidate experience was pretty average. You know, Glassdoor was out there. We were averaging about 3.7 before this process kicked off. And people were talking about us not for the right reasons as well. Nutmeg was losing momentum on key projects and regulatory requirements. You know, we all know those 4 consonants. GDPR is an absolute nightmare. MiFID 2 for us being a FCA registered business as well. We had to do that before we released more products to the market and make more money. Team morale was low. So there's only 2 of us in our recruitment team. Myself and a guy called Ash. Ash focuses on the engineering. I focus on engineering and commercial roles. When there's only 2 of you and the morale is low, it's a really bad place to be. You don't want to be in that team, believe me. And our external partners weren't engaged with us. So we work very, very closely with 2 or 3 recruitment partners. And we see them as an arm of our extension team. And if they're not engaged and if they're not working our jobs, they're working your jobs. And we're unlikely to make the 33 technical hires we'd budgeted between May and December 18. So this is not adding attrition to this as well. So we were looking at about 20 to 22% attrition of a 60-person engineering team. So that's another 12 to 15 hires to make on top of this. We weren't working efficiently, very simply. We had disengaged hiring managers. Again, just to finish on that stat, 45% of the engineering candidates we spoke to, from initial screening to final interview, we were losing them. So what did we do? We went out to the market and researched. We spoke to our engineers, we spoke to recent hires, we spoke to unsuccessful candidates, we spoke to fallout candidates, and this is what happened. We asked, what does a good recruitment process look like to you? We spent time on Stack Overflow and read the frustrations from engineers. And we conducted research on some people in this room. We read articles on LinkedIn and just industry forums. Stack Overflow gave me this stat, which I find sort of quite incredible. 79,000 responses that they got from a survey. Only 16% of developers are actively looking for a job. So anybody good at maths can work out it's about 12,000 people. I know for sure that there's more than 12,000 developer jobs in the UK. 2 pieces of feedback that really sat with me from the research that we did. I took half day off to attend an interview. They kept me there for an hour, maybe an hour and a half. We all know we've taken half days off to go and interview places. There's nothing more frustrating than sitting there, your interviewer being late, and then they keep you there for an hour and ask you questions that are irrelevant to actually the job you're applying for. And the second piece of information, they asked me interview questions, but didn't let me show my ability to code or solve problems. We're hiring engineers here. We're not hiring people managers, marketeers. They don't. It's frustrating for them when they come in and get asked a competency-based interview about stakeholder management. An introverted engineer is not going to be a major stakeholder in your business, but they are going to have to code and solve problems for you. So what do we conclude from all this? We need to build a one-stage interview process. I know Expedia just brought this up, and the ladies somewhere in the middle brought it up as well. So what do we change? Firstly, we've got our exec sponsor. So this is Martin, he's our CEO. At the time, we didn't have a CTO, otherwise we probably would have reached out to him. Martin is a big ambassador for the people team. He understood our frustrations. He's passionate about what we do, and he's passionate about the people we bring into the business. We spoke to and re-engaged the hiring team. So half the battle in recruitment is not the candidate side, but it's keeping your hiring managers engaged, keep the candidates coming through, because they have a day job to do as well. We sometimes forget this. You know, we're booking interviews in their diary. We're going to them with CVs. We need to keep these people engaged. We built a competency handbook as well. So we went across the business. We took our top about 40 competencies of what we felt Nutmeg needed to branch out and become a better business. We wrote a definition for each of these, as you can see, and then we wrote 4 to 5 questions to help hiring managers on interviews. You know, again, we're talking about introverted tech leads who, you know, this doesn't come naturally for them. It really doesn't come very, very natural. We trained all of our hiring managers. So every single manager who had a hire to make from April this year to the end of this year, everybody had training, including new hires that came in. They get this training. And then we did a lunch and learn session for interviewers as well, because not all of our interview panel are hiring managers, they're just interviewers. So the biggest questions for us: how do we assess candidates in a way that enables Nutmeg to give all candidates a fair trial, reduces our time to hire, permits introverted engineers to show us their skills, and gives Nutmeg the best chance of hiring the right engineers? When we were looking at how we create a process that shortens the process for the candidates, makes it more enjoyable for them, we looked at 2 things. We looked at reliability and validity. So reliability was how consistent can we be across interviewing and screening and assessing these candidates. Hence why every hiring manager took the training. And validity is a test measure where it's supposed to be measured. So what does that mean? We weren't asking engineers random questions about things in their past that were totally irrelevant to their future at Nutmeg. We asked them around coding assessments. We asked them how do they ship code? What does code look like to them? What's a bad engineer? What's a good engineer? So where do we start? We started very, very simply. It sounds really silly, but at the beginning. So when we're telephone interview candidates, every candidate comes through our door, if it be agency or direct, gets the same screening form. They get 20 questions, a couple of example questions here. Can you describe a piece of code you're particularly proud of and why? And describe your CI/CD workflow. Every candidate gets the fair trial and gets to answer these on the phone with either myself or Ash. So how do we assess candidates? Similar to the lady from Expedia, Gianna, we do a 1 hour pair programming. So the first hour is with a peer, so a senior engineer and a mid-engineer. We give them real-life scenarios. We give them real-life code that, not so much in our live environment, but things that have happened in the past. Get them to work on things that they're going to be working on. Be honest. This gives us the ability to check their technical ability. The whiteboard sessions that we run, again, it's with a peer, so it's people they're going to be working with on a day-to-day basis. Again, like Jenna, we try and get people who are hiring these candidates to interview them. There's nothing worse than interviewing with somebody and then not having to work with that person. It's really frustrating. And then we do a competency-based interview. So we do need to know if these people are going to fit the Nutmeg way. And this is quite crucial for us. So the challenges. I was quite skeptical about how and when we reject candidates throughout the process. So we actually stop the process after the first and second hour if the candidate isn't suitable. This is really, really ballsy and really frustrating and hard to do from a very early stage, but you have to do it. If your candidates aren't cutting the grade, why put them through another 2 hours? You know, it's not good for you, it's not good for them. You're losing productivity on your team who are interviewing a candidate who is not going to make it. Not everyone was on board with this. Like I say, including myself, I had my doubts on if this would work. Really, I really did, because this was quite game-changing for Nutmeg. We're not a big business. We're only 150 people, of which probably about 45% of our Nutmeggers are engineers. So it was really kind of groundbreaking stuff for Nutmeg. Then the logistical element. So we need 5 people to hire one person, and we need a meeting room for 3 hours. If your meeting room is anything like ours, it's an absolute nightmare. Just trying to get all these things sort of in place and get the candidates' availability as well. Let's not forget that. So the results. We have a fully engaged hiring team now. Our hiring managers genuinely like interviewing candidates because they see the benefit. They've now seen the benefit of how this process works for them and how it works for the candidates and the experience the candidates get. So the candidate experience is so much better. You know, I mentioned earlier that we had a Glassdoor rating of about 3.7. We're up to about 4.4, 4.5 now. As we all know in this room, that encourages people to apply. It reduced our time to hire. So our time to hire from advert to offer is now 32 days. Don't get me wrong, this could be a lot shorter, but for a small business like Nutmeg, it's not bad. And then the engineering tenure has increased. So from April through to date, for the people we've hired, which is 22 hires, only one person hasn't passed probation, and that's because he moved location and couldn't commute back into Vauxhall. So 10% now. Nutmeg now only loses 10% of candidates between initial screening and the final interview. That's something we're very, very proud of. But I owe it to 4 people as well. So this is the team that made it happen. So we've got Ash, who looks like he's got his pajamas on the left. We've got Kira, who's sitting here today, me and Amika. So me and Ash just focus on engineering, and the 2 ladies, they focus on the engagement side after we've passed the candidate across. I want to leave you with one thought as my last slide. I challenge you not to think about time to hire, cost per hire, or tenure, but the candidates you might be missing out on because of your lengthy process.